Hello and welcome. Tonight, we're not dealing with ghosts in a lonely mansion or ancient legends of the sea. We're hunting a phantom of a different kind. A monster made of flesh and blood, of ego and ink, who haunted the streets and headlines of California. Today, we delve into a new story. The Zodiac Killer, solving the ciphers of a phantom. The 1960s were a time of profound cultural upheaval in America. It was the era of peace, love, and flower power, centered in the vibrant, fog-shrouded city of San Francisco. But as the decade drew to a close, a dark shadow fell across the Bay Area, a shadow that would instill a kind of terror so intimate and so public that it would change the relationship between the media, the public, and the police forever. This shadow had a name, one he gave himself, a name that would become synonymous with the uncanny and the unsolved. He called himself the Zodiac. Our story does not begin with a letter, but with a quiet, brutal act of violence on a lonely lover's lane. It was December 20th, 1968, just before Christmas. Lake Herman Road, in the sleepy city of Benicia, was a place where teenagers went for privacy. David Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16, were on their first date. They parked their Rambler station wagon in a gravel turnout. What happened next was swift and merciless. Another car pulled up beside them. A man with a gun emerged. He ordered the couple out of the car. He shot David once in the head, killing him instantly. Betty Lou, in a desperate bid for her life, ran. She didn't get far. The killer shot her 5 times in the back. There was no robbery, no apparent motive. It was a cold, execution-style murder. The Solano County Sheriff's Department was baffled, left with a crime scene but no suspects and no reason. For 7 months, the case went cold, a tragic but seemingly isolated incident. Then, on the night of July 4th, 1969, the shadow struck again. At Blue Rock Springs Park, in Vallejo, another lover's lane, Darlene Farron, 22, and Michael Mageau, 19, sat in their car. A vehicle pulled up behind them, its headlights blinding them before turning off. A man approached with a powerful flashlight and a 9mm pistol. Without a word, he opened fire, spraying the car with bullets. He then turned and walked away. But as Michael screamed in pain, the killer returned and fired 2 more shots into each of them. Darlene was killed. Miraculously, Michael survived, despite being shot in the face, neck, and chest. Less than an hour later, at 12:40 a.m., the phone rang at the Vallejo Police Department. The dispatcher answered. A calm, monotone male voice, speaking as if reading from a script, spoke on the other end. "I wish to report a double murder," he said. "If you will go..." Linking the Blue Rock Springs shooting to the murders on Lake Herman Road. The Phantom now had a voice, but he was about to give himself a name. On August 1st, 1969, 3 envelopes arrived at the offices of the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner. Inside, each was a third of a 408-symbol cryptogram. The author, who claimed responsibility for the 2 attacks, provided details only the killer could know. He also included a demand and a threat. He ordered the newspapers to publish his cipher on their front page.
"If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Fry, August 1st, 69,
he wrote,
I will go on a kill rampage Fry night. I will cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend."
The letter was signed with a symbol, a crosshair, a circle with a cross drawn through it. The Zodiac had been born. The Bay Area was gripped by a mixture of fear and fascination. The police and FBI were frantic. Was it a hoax or the ramblings of a madman? They couldn't take the chance. The ciphers were published. The public became part of the investigation. A high school teacher and his wife, Donald and Betty Harden, were the first to crack it. The message was a chilling, grammatically flawed glimpse into the killer's psyche.
"I like killing people because it is so much fun.
It began.
It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. When I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and they have killed will become my slaves.
He refused to give his name, stating it would slow down or stop his collection of slaves for the afterlife. The Zodiac had established his brand. He was not just a killer, he was a performer, a media manipulator, using the press as his stage. A few days later, he sent another letter to the San Francisco Examiner, this time opening with the iconic, terrifying greeting, "This is the Zodiac speaking." In it, he provided more details about the murders to prove he was the killer. And for the first time, he seemed to mock the police who were hunting him. His next act was his most theatrical and horrifying. On September 27th, 1969, he targeted another young couple, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, picnicking on the peaceful shores of Lake Berryessa in Napa County. This time, the attack was different. A man approached them wearing a bizarre, medieval-style black executioner's hood with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes. On his chest was a bib adorned with his crosshair symbol. He held a gun, but told them he was an escaped convict who needed their car and money to get to Mexico. After tying them up, his demeanor changed.
"I'm gonna have to stab you people,"
he said calmly. He then brutally stabbed Brian 6 times and Cecilia 10 times. Before leaving, he drew his symbol on the door, writing beneath it the dates of his previous attacks and the chilling message, Vallejo 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27/69, 6:30, by knife. He then drove to a payphone and once again reported his own crime to the police. Cecilia Shepard died from her injuries. Brian Hartnell miraculously survived to tell the tale, giving police a detailed description of the Zodiac's terrifying costume and calm, methodical demeanor. The Zodiac was now a full-blown boogeyman, a real-life horror movie villain. But his next move would be his most brazen. He decided to strike not in a secluded lover's lane, but in the heart of San Francisco itself. On October 11, 1969, a taxi driver named Paul Stine picked up a passenger in the Theater District. The passenger asked to be taken to the upscale neighborhood of Presidio Heights. At the corner of Washington and Cherry Streets, he shot Stine once in the head, killing him instantly. He then took Stine's wallet and car keys and, most importantly, tore off a large piece of the driver's blood-soaked shirt. This was the crime that should have ended the Zodiac's reign. 3 teenagers in a house across the street witnessed the attack and called the police. The initial police radio dispatch mistakenly described the suspect as a black male. When 2 officers arrived on the scene, they saw a heavyset white male walking away from the area, but let him go because he didn't match the broadcast description. It's widely believed this man was the Zodiac, who had just been allowed to walk away from a murder scene. He later mocked this very mistake in a letter to the Chronicle. To prove he was responsible, the envelope contained the ultimate trophy, a bloody piece of Paul Stine's shirt. He ended the letter with a threat to shoot up a school bus full of children. The city was in a state of panic. Police cars began escorting school buses. The Zodiac was no longer a Bay Area problem. He was a national terror. From this point on, the Zodiac's war was waged primarily through the mail. He sent a flood of letters and cards to newspapers, taunting police, threatening more violence, and providing more ciphers. He sent a greeting card with a new 340-character cipher, which would remain unsolved for 51 years. He sent a diagram of a bomb he claimed to have planted. He mailed a letter claiming responsibility for the 1966 murder of a young woman named Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside, hundreds of miles to the south, though this link is still debated. He claimed a victim count that rose to 37, but these claims were never verified. His communications became more erratic, his threats more grandiose. And then, after a final, rambling letter in 1974, he fell silent. The Zodiac, as a public persona, had vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. The hunt for his identity, however, had just begun, and it would become one of the most obsessive manhunts in American history. But a few have consistently remained at the top of the list. The most prominent suspect for decades was Arthur Lee Allen. A former elementary school teacher fired for misconduct, Allen was a deeply disturbed individual. He was interviewed by police in 1971, based on a tip from a friend who claimed Allen had spoken of killing people, writing taunting letters, and using the name Zodiac. The evidence seemed compelling. He wore a Zodiac brand watch, owned the same size boots as prints found at Lake Berryessa, and a survivor of the Blue Rock Springs attack tentatively identified him. When police searched his trailer, they found weapons, bloody knives, and animal parts in his basement. However, the crucial evidence never materialized. His fingerprints didn't match those found at the Stein murder scene. His DNA, later tested, didn't match the saliva found on the envelope stamps, and handwriting experts could not definitively link his writing to the Zodiacs. Allen, who died in 1992, remains a tantalizing but unproven possibility. Other suspects have emerged over the years. Richard Gaikowski, an editor for a counterculture newspaper, matched the physical description, and a colleague claimed to recognize his voice from a Zodiac documentary. Lawrence Kane, a real estate agent with a history of run-ins with the law, was identified by one of the victim's sisters as a man who had stalked her. In recent years, a group of independent investigators named Gary Francis Post as the Zodiac, citing circumstantial evidence and a supposed confession. But law enforcement has not verified their claims. For decades, the case languished, a monument to failure. The Zodiac became a ghost, a piece of dark folklore. But technology and the relentless passion of amateur sleuths would give the story a final, stunning chapter. In December 2020, a team of 3 private citizens, an American software developer, a Belgian computer programmer, and an Australian mathematician, announced they had done what the FBI and police could not. They had solved the infamous Z340 cipher after 51 years. The message was just as taunting and egomaniacal as the first. It read, in part, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me." He still did not reveal his name. The cracking of the cipher was a monumental achievement, but it was also a bittersweet victory. It offered another glimpse into the killer's mind, but brought investigators no closer to his identity. The enduring fascination with the Zodiac Killer lies in this very fact. He is a villain defined, not by who he was, but by what he did, and the #meta a public spectacle where the entire country was his audience, and the police were his unwilling playmates. He was a phantom who managed to commit his horrific acts and then melt back into society, perhaps living a normal life, watching with amusement as the world obsessed over the monster he had created. The final cipher is his identity. His true name is the one puzzle he never wanted solved. And until that name is known, the Zodiac will remain at large, a ghost in the machine of American true crime, his taunting voice echoing from the past, forever speaking, but never truly identified.